Our partners in Cameroon, the civil society organisation ASWAL, would describe participatory budgeting as essentially governance for poverty reduction. PB, as it's usually shortened to, involves local authorities. That can be state authorities or regional authorities or a local municipality, collaborating with the residents of the administrative unit in deciding the allocation of public funds. Money will be set aside from the budget to be spent on the most pressing small infrastructure needs required by the residents of the unit. So that could typically be water standpipes, paving, street lighting, the absolute basic infrastructure requirements of a neighbourhood, either in a city or in a rural setting. The origins of PB were in Brazil in the mid to late 1980s, when a decades-long military dictatorship ended there and the first multi-party elections were held. The leftist Workers' Party in the local elections took control of about 30 major municipalities, including Sao Paulo, the capital, but also including Porto Alegre. And all cities and regional governments in Brazil at the time were facing a dire financial crisis. They were very, very short of funds. So the agenda for the Workers' Party was essentially to devise some means of maximising the use of very scant funds while also allowing the voters, the people who put them in power, to participate in a form of genuine democracy which the country had been denied for decades. PB was first introduced to Cameroon in the mid-2000s and it was led, the introduction to the country, by our partner organisation ASWAL. ASWAL is an acronym for the Association des Amoureux du Livre, which is the Society of Book Lovers. Originally the organisation had started out, had been started by university students who were sharing their textbooks and lecture notes with fellow residents in some of Yaoundé, the capital's poorest neighbourhoods. From those early beginnings in the mid-2000s, progress has been steady, and by 2012 there were some 20 municipalities in Cameroon who had introduced the use of participatory budgeting. The residents of the neighbourhood or region that is taking part in a PB process should themselves contribute to whatever is going to be built in their neighbourhood to as great an extent as possible. Now, the contribution can be in cash, or a slightly wealthier resident of a neighbourhood can contribute land, for example to put a water standpipe on, or the contribution can come in labour, whereby people will roster time in order to assist in the building of something like a paved road or assist in the erection of street lights. So this idea that the community itself should actually contribute is one of the really major strengths of the process, and it is probably one of the defining principles of PB, and it is designed in order to ensure that the local community actually takes ownership of whatever asset it is. All over the continent there are neighbourhoods where you will hear stories of some well-meaning external donor appearing and building this or that here or there. Now, invariably the asset that is built is in the wrong place. People haven't been consulted about what their most pressing priority is, so they might end up with a water standpipe when what is most desperately needed is street lighting, because there's a major problem with crime at night. So the idea that the community should both express its wishes in the process, and those wishes should be heard, and also that the community should contribute, are, I think, very distinctive features of PB. Top-down government does not tend to be very good at providing local level services. And one of the potential features of PB is that it is able to, or it is a process whereby small-scale local development can be facilitated in areas where otherwise the state would not be seen. If we look at our study of PB in Yaoundé, the capital of Cameroon, most of the municipalities, or most of the neighbourhoods in the municipalities that are practicing PB, have never received anything from the state whatsoever. So the concept of that PB will provide something, even if it's only small, in the way of provision of water services, or some health facility, or lighting, or social housing, it is a very new one. Now, if we look at the actual the residents, the benefits are obvious. I mean, they can be seen with the naked eye. You will walk around a neighbourhood in which a new water standpipe or electric lighting has been introduced, and you know, the residents will tell you exactly the number of people who are benefiting from this. But as far as residents, citizens are concerned, there are more benefits than simply getting the asset. There are benefits involved with collaborating. In a country like Cameroon, which has been to all intents and purposes a dictatorship for more than 30 years, the concept of participating in these neighbourhoods is a new one, and it can be extremely empowering. It is not easy, it has complications, and you end up with rivalries being played out, but nevertheless, this is not a country with a tradition of participation, and civil society organisations on the ground who are encouraging PB firmly believe that actually going through the process is a very good way of communities securing some much needed asset, but also learning more about democracy at its simplest. And they also learn a great deal about municipal authorities and how mayors and municipal staff work, what the problems they're facing are, which are very considerable with scant resources. So there's a learning process, and there is also a receiving process. If you have a go-ahead mayor who doesn't simply believe that power comes from the top and the people are irrelevant, then PB can be an extremely useful tool for him or her to align policy making, progressive policy making, with the actual needs of the residents. It can also help in a situation, or combat a situation that is very familiar to all local authorities across the continent, which is to make very scant resources go further. Because if you're securing a contribution from the residents, and you're also being slightly cleverer about the way you buy the materials and source the labour to build whatever asset it is that is going to be put into a neighbourhood, then you not only conserve resources, but you make your resources go further. There is another way in which is of extreme interest to many mayors, and it is one of the prime reasons why many mayors come on board, and that is that PB can improve revenue collection, tax collection, because part of the social contract between a municipality and the residents sets out that the residents will get what it is that they're asking for, provided they get better at paying their taxes. And it is by no means a universal rule. This does not happen automatically. But for example, if you spoke to the municipal staff in Yaoundé 6, one of the 7 sub-municipalities in Yaoundé, the capital of Cameroon, they would say that undoubtedly revenue collection has improved year on year on year since they first adopted PB in 2006. PB needs to come with something of a health warning. It is not a universal panacea. It can be deployed for cynical reasons by cynical mayors who wish to look progressive because they hope that it might ensure that they get extra funding from donors for that reason. It can be manipulated by citizens as well. The process can be captured by political factions within a neighbourhood. It is also impossible really to create a blueprint for PB because the experts on this process are united on many things, but one of them is the fact that it is different. It takes place differently in every location in which PB occurs. And that, I suppose, is entirely logical because you're talking about human interaction and the way this plays out is going to be different in every location. So one of the limitations is that it can't just be done by a manual. Another limitation is that it takes time. In Cameroon, there have been the leading civil society organisations, including Africa Research Institute's partner in Yaoundé, ASWAL, have been pushing PB and educating residents and educating municipalities and participating in conferences across Africa, across the world, I mean including World Urban Forum, etc., for more than a decade. There are now 20 out of 380 odd municipalities in the country practicing PB. That's about 5%. This represents very good progress, indeed, steady progress, but you can't just have PB everywhere overnight. Now, both in Cameroon and in Senegal, the leading PB organisations, ASWAL and Enda Ecopop, are both targeting 50% of municipalities over the coming decades. And that would be a really significant achievement if they got there. Other limitations include the fact that it is mobilisation of residents can be extremely difficult. The level of political cynicism in a society like Cameroon, which has been under what amounts to a dictatorship for more than 3 decades, has left people with no tradition of participation, and the civil service has no tradition of public service. So overcoming these kinds of barriers can be extremely difficult. It can be too difficult. I mean, there are many locations in Cameroon and all across the world where PB has been adopted and then for a variety of reasons lapses. So it is not a silver bullet, PB, but it seems to me that the basic principles are very well geared to dealing with the challenges faced both by local authorities and by residents against the sub-Saharan African background of very rapid urbanisation in many areas. One of the most important lessons is that patience is required. It takes a long time to educate residents and municipal authorities alike on how the process works, how it can be made to be most efficient, and to keep it fair, to keep it transparent. So patience is definitely a virtue when it comes to adopting PB. That said, one of the tremendous opportunities in Africa is for greater liaison and knowledge sharing between municipalities and neighbourhoods and civil society organisations who have been involved with PB. And this is taking place. There are many platforms, there are many visits occurring across the continent between municipalities, and I think that this will certainly help in coming years to vastly increase the number of local administrations who are adopting PB.